The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 18th chapter. Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the temple authorities. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." The Gospel of the Lord. Today is Christ the King Sunday. Usually, anytime Jesus as a king or Jesus having a kingdom comes up in a reading, I like to offer some precautions. First, in the context of the United States, we don't have kings. We had a whole thing with England about it. So Christ the King doesn't translate well into our context, and Christ the President doesn't sound right. Second, the image of a king is overtly patriarchal. It assumes that being controlled by a male ruler and not a female ruler is somehow the ideal. Third, kingdoms can turn into empires. We recognize the problems that can occur when one person has absolute power. Kingdoms are where colonialism comes from. These are all reasons why maybe thinking about Christ as the king and Christ having a kingdom are problematic. So, what do we do with a theological and liturgical history that likes to refer to Jesus as a king? One subtle change that some make is to refer to today as Reign of Christ Sunday. That takes out the problematic language and focuses on the main idea of Jesus' reign or rule. Empires and kings were the unending story of the people of God in Israel and Judah. At one time, they had a king, the era of the monarchy. They were kind of like the golden days when David and Solomon were king. But that didn't last long. Kings and empires come and go, a lesson that the people of Israel learned the hard way. First, it was the Assyrians, then the Babylonians, then the Persians, then the Greeks, and in Jesus' day, the Romans. One after the other, each one maintaining power for a season of a few decades or a few centuries, and then falling to the next in line. The people of Israel were almost like a joke to the rest of the world. This tiny little place settled on this strategic strip of land that connects Africa to Europe and Asia, a crossroads, with many people always coming and going one way or the other. It made it important to many people who lived outside the area because it was highly valuable. If you controlled this little crossroads, then you controlled the flow of import and export to the rest of the world, which is why it was continuously up for grabs, politically desirable by many kings. All this despite the indigenous people who lived there continuously, Palestinians and Israelites. The thing about kingdoms and empires is that there is a clear point at the top to which everything flows. Someone sits at the top of a kingdom. Someone claims supreme authority over all others inside that political social structure. In the case of the Romans, it was the Caesar. Now, Pilate, from today's story, was not Caesar. Pilate was a governor, a middleman, overseeing the province of Judea on behalf of the emperor. So Pilate has a king, It's the emperor of Rome. And the people in the province of Judea also have a king. It's the same emperor whose rule they live under. And what gets Jesus in trouble is an accusation made by the religious leaders. Jesus claims he is the king of the Jews. That is treasonous. That is the sort of allegation that the religious leaders hope will get Jesus eliminated. And also an allegation that Pilate would rather not have lead to some sort of uprising to overthrow the Roman occupation. You see, politics are at the center of the gospel story. The political leaders of the day are the ones having their sense of order threatened by a local claiming to be king. The drama of Jesus is wrapped up in the political powers of his day. That's why it's hard to not make the Gospels about politics, because Jesus was tangled up with people and the powers that ruled them. But Jesus is particular in the way he clarifies the accusation that is brought against him. My kingdom is not of this world. In other words, Jesus admits to the accusation of being a king, but it's not what you think. Jesus is not a king in the same way that David or Solomon or Sennacherib or Nebuchadnezzar or Cyrus or Caesar were kings. Jesus' reign is not bound by this world. Jesus' reign is not modeled on the ways that kings of the past have operated. Jesus' reign is not marked by war and conquest. Jesus' reign is not built on military might and the surrender of enemies. Jesus' reign is not situated at the top of an empire, receiving all wealth and prestige. Jesus' reign is not sustained by weapons. Jesus' reign is not trying to expand geographical borders. Instead, Jesus' reign is not from this world. Instead of expanding borders, Jesus' reign is expanding hearts with more capacity for mercy, to see the image of God within each and every human. Instead of weapons, Jesus' reign is sustained by prayer and sacrifice. Jesus reigns when you give so that others can have. Instead of empires built like pyramids, Jesus' reign is a circle. Jesus doesn't reign from above, but from inside the circle, shoulder to shoulder with you. Instead of military might, Jesus' reign is humble, gentle, and meek. The other cheek is turned. The extra mile is walked. A bruised reed he will not break. Instead of war and conquest, Jesus' reign is peace. The reign of Christ is fundamentally peaceful. It is defined by a peace that surpasses all understanding. Jesus is a king, but not a king bound by the ways of this world. Jesus is the King of love. As followers of this King of love, you have to remember, this isn't like the reign of earthly leaders and their empires. You are called to be something different, to offer forgiveness, to serve all in need. Amen.